Again, good morning. Welcome to today's candidate forum for City Commission Seat 2 with incumbent Commissioner Curtis Richardson and Dot Inman-Johnson. I'm LaShawn Gordon. I get the honor of being the Director of Strategic Initiatives here at United Partners in Human Services. And we want to thank you for taking the time out of your busy day to join us today as we're going to the fourth quarter of the year. This is definitely a busy time. Here at UPHS, we are all about the power of the collective. So we're super excited to have with us Kathleen Spahar, who is the Executive Director, who's the Executive Director of COCA, which is the Council on Culture and Arts. And so again, Kathleen and I will be flowing together over today's candidate forum session. So you'll hear from both of us. But before we get started, we want to kind of talk about Zoom etiquette. We have disabled the chat this morning. There will be time at the end for questions. So don't worry about putting your questions or comments in the chat. We promise we'll save a little time at the end to do that. The forum this morning is really about learning from our candidates and their perspective on issues that are impacting nonprofits and human service entities. With our agencies, with our community, we're really all about one unified voice. That is what we're trying to do by engaging our local leaders and talking about the needs of the community in our sector. So one of the things we know that nonprofits have always been an essential part of our community's financial health. And we know that in the city of Tallahassee, things are no different. So now I'm going to pass it over to Kathleen, who is going to share a few more ground rules before we get started.
Thank you, LaShawn, and good morning, everyone. The forum ground rules are as follows. First, the moderator will ask questions and give each candidate a chance to answer. We will be asking that each candidate respond in alphabetical order of last name, so Inman-Johnson, Richardson, and then alternating thereafter. Next, with each question, candidates will have up to 120 seconds to respond. If a rebuttal is necessary, each candidate will be given 30 seconds to respond before we move on to the next question. Thirdly, a bell will be rung when your time is up. However, please feel free to finish your thought if you are in the middle of speaking. And lastly, after we have had the chance to answer our 10 questions, we will open it up to any participants to ask questions, and the same response rules will apply.
All righty. So without further ado, we'll go ahead and get started. And the first question is for Ms. Dot Inman-Johnson. So Ms. Dot, given the challenges of budget restraints, how would you stretch or increase taxpayers' dollars to address the unmet needs of our city of Tallahassee neighbors?
First of all, good morning. I would reprioritize how we spend our dollars to make sure that we are taking care of the people who need help the most in our community, and work with nonprofits to identify priority areas that need more attention, the crisis areas in our community. We have 25% of our residents who live in desperate poverty, and we have to do something about that. We can't be an all-America city and be satisfied with 25% of our residents not able to live a quality life. But I would reprioritize our spending. I would insist that the high-paid executive staff of the city of Tallahassee work to identify additional funding from outside of our community that we can add to what we do for our residents.
Thank you.
Do I just get started?
We have a similar question for you. I think, Kathleen, you're up next.
Oh, yes. Did you know, was there a rebuttal? Did you? Commissioner Richardson, did you want to add any rebuttal on that?
No, but do I answer that same question or? I'm sorry.
Yeah. Yes, you can go ahead and answer that same question for number one.
Okay. Well, thank you all for giving us this opportunity this morning to be here and address issues, of course, that are important to me as a longtime resident of the city of Tallahassee, but particularly in my role as a city commissioner. Um, I think, I have supported the human services sector in a number of ways throughout my years here in Tallahassee. But I think the most effective that we've identified is the Community Human Service Partnership program, where we provide funding for our area nonprofits and human services organizations. That has proven to be very effective. Of course, there's always a need for more money as expenses rise each year. But I think we found an effective way to provide financial assistance to those organizations, those human services organizations in our community. In an equitable way. It's an application process, and those organizations are provided funding based on the recommendations of a committee. We have been able to fund those organizations that have been the most effective and impactful in addressing the human services needs of our community. Over the 10 years that I've been on the commission, we have steered just about $20 million
Commissioner, you're
towards
at
this.
time, so if you'll finish that statement, thank you.
Okay, towards the CHSP, and in partnership with the county, just about $30 million in that regard. And I would continue to advocate for additional funding in the next 2-year funding cycle.
Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Richardson, the next question is going to start with you.
Okay.
What should the top 3 budgetary priorities of the city include from your perspective?
Well, that's a very good question. But of course, public safety has to be number one. And that's not just policing. We can't police our way out of the issues that we're seeing, the crime issues that we're seeing in our community. It's got to be a comprehensive approach, and we've taken that comprehensive approach in working with our young people through what we call our TFLA program, Tallahassee Future Leaders Academy, our Tempo program, where we work with disaffected youth in the community who may have dropped out of school, don't have job training and skills. We bring them in and give them the tools that they need to be successful in life. But of course, we have to fund our police agency as well, the Tallahassee Police Department. And so that's one priority. The other is housing. We know that there is a shortage of affordable housing, and affordable across the range of affordability, from our working professionals to those in the low income area. So we've got to do more to address that, and that has been my personal priority. And then thirdly, economic development. Through our Office of Economic Vitality, we have been able to lure companies like Amazon and Danfoss Turbocor to our community, creating those high wage, high skilled jobs that help get people out of poverty. But even more importantly, we are investing in our small, minority, and women-owned businesses right here in the city of Tallahassee, helping them to grow and create jobs for our local residents. So those are the 3 priorities that I see that are most important in terms of building our annual budget.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Commissioner. Over to you, candidate Inman-Johnson. So we get the same question. So what should the top 3 budgetary priorities of the city include from your perspective?
They should include reducing our poverty rate, which would, in essence, be addressing the problems with crime and affordable housing and economic development, because it would reduce the income inequality in our community. that causes the high poverty rate. And you cannot do that programmatically with a program here and there. You have to really dig into the root causes of poverty. So in essence, I'm agreeing with several of the things that are the issues that have to be addressed, but one of them that was not mentioned was our fiscal stewardship in the city of Tallahassee. I would call for a forensic audit to make sure we are spending our dollars appropriately to make room for the real needs of people in this community.
Thank
Yes,
you.
Kathleen?
Yes, rebuttal?
Rebuttal?
Mhm.
Thank you. Well, the one thing I would say in response to Ms. Inman-Johnson's forensic audit suggestion, we are on an annual basis required by the state of Florida to conduct an audit of our budget. I've spoken to our Auditor General, Mr. Dennis Sutton, about this issue, and he said that there really is no need for a forensic audit and that it wouldn't provide us anything that we aren't already getting based on what's required by the state in terms of our annual audit and accounting for the dollars that are spent.
Thank you, Commissioner.
All right, Ms. Inman-Johnson, what role does local government play in ensuring supports are available, as well as access to services for people experiencing mental health challenges in the community?
Before I answer that question, I'd like to follow up that,
We,
of course,
hold on for a second. So he only gets so it's not a rebuttal to every response because we won't get
well, I'm using part of my time.
Okay, yes, ma'am.
Of course, the commissioner will say no forensic audit is needed, but it is a more detailed audit than the one that the state requires, which just skims the surface and looks at the documents that the city provides. This would go into investigative kinds of skills on what's happening in the financial department. On the issue of mental health is part of the health of the community. So if CHSP is working on providing services to nonprofits that are providing for needed services in the community, including health services, mental health services should be part of that. And many of you do not realize that when I was on the commission before, it was the late Commissioner and Mayor Steve Meisberg and I who really got the city involved in funding human services because the city was content to let the county, which is mandated by the state, handle all of the funding of human and health services. And we were the advocates to get the city into funding human services and started out with the Bond Community Health Center over at the Smith Williams Center. And I am a strong supporter of providing for mental health services and more funding for it in the community.
Thank you.
Thank you, LaShawn. And I would say local government plays an important role in that respect. One of the things that we found as we would dispatch our law enforcement officers, in particular, to incidents in the community, we found that a lot of the persons who were perpetrating the incidents that required law enforcement actually had mental health disorders and needed mental health intervention as opposed to incarceration or being brought into the legal system. And so we developed what we called our team, Tallahassee Emergency Assessment Mobile Unit, which is a unit consisting of law enforcement, social workers, and others who are appropriate when an emergency dispatch is made into the community. Since its inception, we have identified 1,900 individuals through the team unit, if you will, who otherwise probably would have been in jail, locked up, or in the prison system by now. But it was determined that their need was mental health services. And so that unit has been very successful. We also do provide uh, funding through CHSP for organizations like Appalachia that provide mental health services for individuals in the community. That's a part of our health and wellness initiatives through the city.
Thank you.
You. On to the next question. So Commissioner Richardson, we're going to start with you.
Okay.
Human services and nonprofits are generally and are woefully underfunded at the local, state, and federal levels while the demands for services continue to increase. So
Right.
would you support an increase in funding in all categories for CHSP if reelected for the 2026 funding cycle? I know you've already mentioned some of this, but if you could just elaborate.
Yeah. I mean, I certainly would. As a matter of fact, just recently, I advocated for some additional funding that was awarded in this fiscal year's budget and for the next 2-year budget cycle for CHSP. I can't remember the exact amount. For some reason, about 300,000 comes to mind. Don't hold me to that, but I think that was the figure of the additional funding that we approved. And I think it's important because those programs and services, as the cost increase over the years, as the number of individuals who are in need of those services increases, we've got to provide additional funding. Um, and so, yeah, I would certainly advocate for additional funding. But as Ms. Johnson mentioned earlier, we've got to look for, and we have done an excellent job as a city in looking for grants from the state and federal government to assist us in funding some of those programs. And an instance of that is a $9 million grant that we just got to do infrastructure improvements in the Jake Gaither neighborhood. But that's the approach that we've taken to try to make sure that we have the necessary funds to provide for the programs and services that our residents need.
Thank you, Commissioner. Ms. Inman-Johnson, same question. So would you support an increase in funding in all categories for CHSP if elected to the 2026 funding cycle? And again, you can elaborate on what you've already shared.
The answer to the question is an enthusiastic yes. But I would like to add that I am a founding member of United Partners for Human Services and a former executive director of one of the nonprofits served by United Partners for Human Services, and know how difficult it is to deal with the high level of problems that we have in our community. And it is as important to the city as it is for the nonprofits that we really reinvest more dollars in providing for these real important needs in our community for folks who cannot address them themselves, because it makes us a better city and it reduces what we would be spending in crime prevention, in education, and a lot of other needs of our young folks. And so I strongly support more funding.
Thank you.
All righty. So the next question is, what would you do to strengthen the partnership between local government and our nonprofit sector? And Ms. Inman-Johnson, we'll start with you.
Well, I think city leaders probably would benefit from spending more time learning about what all of the nonprofits do. And I would suggest a retreat, not just with city staff and city leaders, but a retreat between city and county government and school board and nonprofits to really learn how they are making a difference in our community and saving a lot of expenses that would otherwise have to be made if they were not there. I think a lot of people think of nonprofits as just taking from the budget, but nonprofits are small businesses in this community that employ a lot of people and bring in money from outside of the state, from the federal government and the state, along with the funding that they get in CHSP, to make a difference in the lives of people here in the community.
Thank you.
LaShawn, could you repeat the question? I'm sorry.
Yes, sir. What will you do to strengthen the partnership between local government and our nonprofit sector?
Well, several things. One is I have been very involved in the human services sector as a volunteer, serving on a number of boards. I currently serve on the board of Sports Ability and many others, the Urban League, Sickle Cell Foundation, the NAACP, because I think it's important that as elected leaders that we be involved in the community and actually involved in those organizations to have a clear understanding of what the needs really are. And so by being involved, we get to see the programs and firsthand, we get to see the programs and services that those organizations provide and what the needs are from local government. I think one of the things that we need to do is certainly increase communication between our local government and the nonprofit sector. I would agree with Ms. Johnson as well that maybe there should be annual retreats. I know we have our annual planning retreat as a city, but maybe have an annual retreat where we bring in representatives from the human services and nonprofit sector through UHPS. I hope I got United Partners for Human Services. Yes, and discuss what the needs of our community are and how we can work together and work together even better to address those needs. We don't necessarily have to just be a funding source. We have resources available through the city, human resources available, and others where we could form an even greater and better partnership to address the needs of our residents.
Thank you.
We'll move on to the next question. I think we'd all agree that arts and creativity are the soul of our nation, and Tallahassee-Leon County is no different. So how can the city of Tallahassee ensure that human services, arts, culture, and heritage organizations are a part of the innovative solutions in creating a healthier and more united community? And Commissioner Richardson, we'll start with you.
Sure. And Kathleen, there is no question that those organizations play a very important role in our community. We know that our human services partners address the needs of our residents that the city couldn't even begin to address, with our limited budget to address the programmatic needs of our city. And so those organizations are certainly essential to building a more prosperous and cohesive city. Certainly the arts and history and heritage organizations, we are a very diverse community. We seldom interact to get to know each other, and those organizations are a way that we can learn about individuals and groups that are different from us. And that gives us an opportunity to build cohesion within our community. And so I certainly see the importance of those organizations in helping us build a community where we are just one, rather than a multitude of groups that don't interact and support each other, because that's what community is all about.
Thank you, Commissioner Richardson. So candidate Inman-Johnson, the same questions. How can the city of Tallahassee ensure that human services, arts, culture, and heritage organizations are a part of the innovative solutions in creating a healthier and more united community?
By recognizing that they are important to creating the unique character of our community, both in downtown and in surrounding areas. Some of you may not be aware, but I was this region's representative on the Florida Arts Council for many years and was able to redirect a lot of the funding that used to go just to Central and South Florida to the North Florida region that has benefited many of the arts and cultural groups, including getting started the local arts agency that is now COCA, but started out as the Cultural Resources Commission. And also confirmed by the Florida Senate on the Tallahassee Historic Preservation Board. So I find all of these to be important elements of making Tallahassee what it is, and not just like any other city, and deserves to be preserved. Some of the problems we are faced with going forward is preserving our arts district. And I am strongly in favor of working to try to mitigate any situations that would prevent that happening.
Thank you, Ms. Inman-Johnson. Next question.
Rebuttal?
Oh, rebuttal? Yes.
Yes, I just wanted to indicate that I too support our arts district, but we have a fiduciary responsibility to the tax-paying public of this community to make sure that if we invest in properties, that we do the due diligence necessary before we go in that direction. And that's what the City Commission has instructed staff to do. We were told that there was contamination on the site at Railroad Square. We don't know how much that could cost. It could be 100,000, it could be $1 million to mitigate that contamination on that site. But we need to know that before we move forward with any offer to purchase that property.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you.
Ms.
So we're
Inman-Johnson.
going to move to the next question. And if you want to roll your response into your time, we'll handle it that way. So the next question is, homelessness continues to be a growing issue in our community, compounded by increased rents and low affordable housing stock. What immediate and long-term solutions do you believe should be deployed and begin to reduce homelessness in the city of Tallahassee? So I'll start the timer. And like I said, if you want to fold a little bit of your rebuttal in, we can do that.
Yes, there was nothing I said in my previous answer that said a purchase option was the only option. People can be creative in coming up with a solution that benefits all parties, whether it's a purchase option or another option. But you have to be invested to find out what the best option is. On the homeless, can you repeat the question on the homeless?
Yes, ma'am. So homelessness continues to be a growing issue in our community. What immediate and long-term solutions do you believe should be deployed to reduce homelessness in the city of Tallahassee?
Well, I've always said the best option to affordable housing and homelessness is keeping people in the homes they're already in through good rehabilitation programs and funding to create incentives for quality, affordable housing. And I don't just mean propping up a big apartment complex where you stick all of the low income folks. I'm talking about real housing, some of it single family. Also, one of the things we talked about earlier, I talked about Jacksonville years ago, had a single room occupancy project that may not have solved all the problems, but it was a start. It provided a place for people to live while they were getting on their feet, finding jobs with comprehensive services in those locations to help connect them with the services that they needed so that they could become independent and live on their own once they had jobs, real income to afford, but you need
We're at
comprehensive
time.
services.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Commissioner Richardson, the same question.
Thank you, LaShawn. Two things immediately. One, what we realize is that our homeless population is growing because there are individuals coming here literally from all over the country because they hear about the programs and services that we offer here in Tallahassee. You know, we're the hub of this region. And so people come from the rural areas surrounding Tallahassee to take advantage of those services. So the one thing that we're doing, we have what we call our HOST, Homeless Outreach Services Team. And they have identified individuals who have come to our community from other areas, and they work with them to get them returned to where they come from. It's not just kicking them out, but they actually talk with family members and find out if they are in a position to have that person return to the family and for them to be taken care of in an appropriate manner. So that's one of the things. And I know we've probably relocated several hundred individuals that way in a very humane and a correct way. Like I said, we're not just kicking individuals out. We need to continue to support the programs and services at the Carney Center. That's an important aspect of our community, and we certainly thank Rick Carney for his vision to start that service for the homeless in our community. But as Ms. Johnson said, and it's been my personal priority as a commissioner, is to provide low income housing. One of the things that I took the lead on with Brenda Williams in our Tallahassee Housing Authority is converting the dilapidated Orange Avenue project into what we see now as Columbia Gardens at South City. And that is a mixture of low income and market rate housing. We were able to get that area included in our CRA district so that they could qualify for funding through the CRA. And that was one of the ways we got that project off the ground. Close to that, or in close proximity to Columbia Gardens, is Magnolia Oaks. And so that's the kind of affordable, low income, affordable housing that we're providing for individuals and families in our community, in addition to the housing rehab that we do through organizations like the Tallahassee Lenders Consortium, whose board I serve on.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next question. As a sector, we recognize the importance of diversity, equity, and inclusion in our operational practices and have begun implementing resources for our sector to implement too. So what commitment to DEI will you make when elected to office? And we'll start with you, Commissioner Richardson.
Thank you, Kathleen. And that's an easy one for us as a city of Tallahassee. We have recognized for years that DEI was important. It's under attack now throughout our country. But we actually have an office of DEI within the city of Tallahassee, run by Angela Hindreth. And they do an excellent job of providing training and guidance to city staff, educating them about the importance and value of DEI within our community, that we have a city organization that reflects the variety, if you will, of the citizenship in the city of Tallahassee. So yes, I am wholeheartedly in favor of continuing to support our efforts at recognizing and including DEI within the city of Tallahassee.
Thank you. Candidate Inman-Johnson, same question. What commitment to DEI will you make when elected to office?
I will be totally committed to it, as I have always been, no matter in what position I held. However, examples of not following the DEI policy throughout city government is the fact that I hear from employees who are not at the executive level of city government, who feel that they are being managed by fear and intimidation, afraid of losing their jobs. And a good example of that would be the exit of the city attorney, Cassandra Jackson, who was the only Black person who has ever held the position of city attorney in the city of Tallahassee, because such a hostile environment was created for her by the city manager and his staff, who were subordinate to her. And so you have to be honest, an honest broker, and work hard to make sure the policies that the city commission passes and that are supposed to be implemented are truly being implemented from top to bottom.
Rebuttal?
Rebuttal?
Yeah, I would just question Ms. Inman-Johnson's assertion that people are being managed through fear and intimidation. If that were the case, it has not been brought to my attention in the 10 years that I've been with the city. And certainly if it had, we would have addressed it. We don't want anyone to feel that they are in danger of losing their job or their livelihood, and that they're being supervised through fear and intimidation. I just have not heard that from employees, and I make myself available to those employees and let them know that if there are issues like that, they can certainly feel free to come to me and share those concerns.
Thank you, Commissioner. And Candidate Inman-Johnson, we'll go ahead and handle any other rebuttal to this question in your next question.
All right, Ms. Inman-Johnson, what is something about the nonprofit sector that you would like to see improved?
First, my rebuttal. Of course, employees aren't going to come to you, Commissioner, because they sense that you are supportive of what the city manager and his staff do. And they would fear that they would lose their jobs. Cassandra was a direct employee of yours and you did not stand up for her. The question again.
Yes, ma'am. What is something about the nonprofit sector that you would like to see improved?
I would like to see, there isn't a lot, but more funding. I'd like to see the nonprofits not operate in silos. I'd like to see more coordination and visioning between the nonprofits and identifying problems that that could come up beyond what they are already faced with, and together in a unified way through UPHS, coming up with recommendations for how to address them. I think UPHS is doing a wonderful job, but if there's anything, I would like to see more coordination between the agencies on problems.
Thank you. Commissioner, the same question.
Yes, thank you, LaShawn. I too agree that UPHS is doing a tremendous job in providing for the needs of our nonprofit sector through education, training, and the like. Um, I guess where I would like to see improvement is more in terms of the coordination. You know, we have a number of agencies that are seeking to impact the same population of individuals, but there's not much communication between those or coordination between and among those organizations. So I'd like to see more of that. I'd like to see more and better communication between the nonprofit sector and the funding sources. Funding sources meaning the city and county, so that we're all on the same page in terms of what we're trying to accomplish. Um, for instance, and I'll talk about this a little bit later in one of the next questions. The whole issue of poverty and how we're impacting poverty. Poverty. The city has its approach, but then also, of course, the nonprofit sector is involved in addressing that issue as well. And I think we all need to be coordinated in how we approach even that one issue. So those are some of the things I would like to see improved in that nonprofit sector.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Thank you. This is the last question, and we want to make sure that we have time for questions for our participants. So we're going to start out with you, Commissioner Richardson, with this last
Yes.
question. Tallahassee, Leon County is home to 32304, which is the zip code that's been noted for having the highest poverty rate in the state of Florida. So what do you think local government's role is in addressing poverty in our community?
Well, I, Kathleen, continue to question that assertion because when you look at how that was determined, they included the income of students, and there are lots of students in that area. But certainly, it is an issue that needs to be addressed, and we are addressing it as a city. In our strategic plan, one of our top priorities is impact on poverty. And the way that we're approaching it as a city is looking at several factors. Intervening with our disaffected youth. Those are individuals 16 to 24 years old who may have dropped out of school, don't have job training skills that would allow them to have gainful employment. We're also looking at our high school students, reaching them at an early age and providing employment opportunities for them through the city of Tallahassee and what we call our Tallahassee Future Leaders Academy. Um, we're also looking at health and wellness, and of course, providing resources through CHSP for those individuals who don't have access necessarily to affordable quality health care. And we know that's a determinant of how people are able to find and maintain employment. And then lastly, we are working with those individuals in housing, because housing, as we've talked about here this morning, is a primary issue in determining or impacting poverty. And so we're working not only to maintain the housing stock that we have through rehabilitation and redevelopment, but also those efforts, like I mentioned with Columbia Gardens, in what we do through the Tallahassee Lenders Consortium and Habitat is to provide new housing stock. We have now more housing that's been provided and in the pipeline than we've had over the past 25 years, because we've made that such a high priority. So those are the ways that we, through our strategic plan, are addressing the issue of poverty in that zip code and throughout our city.
Thank you, Commissioner. Ms. Inman-Johnson, same question. Local government's role in addressing poverty in our community. What do you think it should be?
32304, Frenchtown, Griffin Heights. Once a very proud part of our community with a lot of support and a lot of commerce, is now being overrun with student housing and very little investment put into revitalizing that particular area. And I think if there was more opportunity to reinvest in the Frenchtown, Griffin Heights area, particularly the commercial core, like Economy Drugs has been there since 1960. And there has been very little help for that little commercial area revitalizing itself, creating jobs. When the Renaissance Center was created, that first floor facing the street was supposed to be commercial. It was supposed to be places where people could go and like a little downtown area as Frenchtown used to be. And nothing has been done. That would create jobs. It would create small business opportunities, all kinds of benefits for that community.
Thank you. Thank you both for this questioning.
Kathleen, can I do a rebuttal?
Very briefly.
Very briefly. Unprecedented in the history of Tallahassee, we have identified 5 predominantly African-American neighborhoods, Griffin Heights and Frenchtown included among that 5, and we have invested $6 million in each of those neighborhoods. And what's unique to this, also, in addition to the funding, is the fact that we give the residents the opportunity to tell us how they want to see that money spent.
Thank
Do
you.
I ever get to rebut?
Yes, please, briefly.
Yeah,
Then we're going to move on.
Thank you. The residents in those areas don't necessarily see it that way. In Frenchtown, they do not feel that they get to make the decision. For instance, the Frenchtown Southside CRA money that was set aside for that CRA was given to the developer of Somo Walls to build a business 3 blocks away from the Capitol, which did not benefit Frenchtown and did not really benefit the South Side because it's too far away from it. And the citizens of that community really didn't see that as a benefit to them.
Thank you.
Go ahead and close it out. We thank you all for your time. We appreciate our members, our community friends and partners. If you have any questions or want to get any follow-up questions answered, please feel free to reach out to me, Amber, or Justin, and we can help facilitate that. You all have a great day, and we will see you soon. Thank you.